What's going on, everyone? Ash here with a news update on Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Smash Bros. Series creator and director Masahiro Sakurai is back with another column in the latest issue of Japanese gaming magazine Famitsu, and this time he goes into detail on the topic of presentations, particularly how he tackled the creation of Smash Bros. Ultimate's reveal video at E3. Fortunately, thanks to a full translation of the column provided by the folks over at Nintendo Everything, we can summarize the information within for you right here. Sakurai begins by explaining how Smash Bros. Is the kind of game that necessitates a dense presentation, especially before release, and the E3 presentation revealing Smash Bros. Ultimate was certainly dense, clocking in at around 20 minutes. While Sakurai wrote the script for it himself, he says there wasn't really anything special about the video's production. The production process, he says, eventually boiled down to 4 steps: listing out the video's elements in bullet points, separating it all into segments, writing everything out in sentences, and editing the content based on what Sakurai was aiming to accomplish with the video. After that, Sakurai says the teams in Kyoto and Tokyo worked on their respective segments while Sakurai and his team recorded the live-action sequence, and after that was all done, Nintendo handled the editing of the actual presentation. However, Sakurai recalls that in Smash's case in particular, that wasn't the end of things. They also had to capture footage of each character fighting for the character introductions, and he remarks that they wanted to put a lot of effort into this part in particular, all for the viewer's enjoyment. Sakurai then reveals that a production company called Digital Frontier was subcontracted to handle the CG parts of the presentation, with Sakurai himself checking in every so often to provide overall guidance. As an aside for those curious, this isn't Digital Frontier's first foray into games. They've also worked on the CG sequences for games like Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, Tekken 6 Bloodline Rebellion, Yakuza 4, and Lost Odyssey. And now, back to the column. Sakurai goes on to remark that it takes a bunch of different people to prepare a major presentation like this, and that he himself had to wear a few different hats to complete all the tasks needed to bring it all together. All that effort was worth it though, because according to Sakurai, presentation is essential. Normally, such work would be left to the public relations team, with Sakurai offering light supervision, but he feels that the way they did things this time around, as described above, worked best. Simply making a game isn't enough, Sakurai advises. A good game might as well be nothing if no one knows about it, and in this way, Sakurai says the content of a game and the way it is publicized magnify one another. Sakurai then delves into the subject of tempo and how presentations rely so heavily on this concept. While it's important to maintain tempo such that information doesn't trickle out slowly, Sakurai warns that tempo doesn't refer to the actual speed of the presentation, and that it's not necessarily a bad thing for a presentation to take a bit of time to get to the good stuff. So if tempo doesn't refer to the speed of a presentation, what does it refer to? Sakurai says it all comes down to one key question: how do you maintain interest without fans becoming bored? According to Sakurai, this must always be taken into consideration, because after all, a presentation can be long if it's engaging and maintains the viewer's interest, but if it isn't those things, the presentation won't engage viewers or deliver the intended message even if it's short. In Smash Bros. Ultimate's case, Sakurai explains, there is a ton of information they wanted to share because there are a lot of game elements to cover in a game like Smash. But in the end, Sakurai decided he had to be straightforward with it and trim everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. And with each fighter's introduction video getting less than 30 seconds to shine, Sakurai considered what content viewers might find to be the most interesting and balanced things out from there. Sakurai goes on to compare this process to working on a game's design document, explaining how it's best to be as concise as possible, but that this does not necessarily mean just reducing the number of sentences. It's not the length of a game design document that's important, but how easily and interestingly it reads. Indeed, just like their approach to creating Smash Bros. Ultimate's E3 presentation. As an example, Sakurai then reveals that Smash Bros. Ultimate's design document comes in at over 200 pages, a whopping number to be sure. If you took a passing glance at it, Sakurai says, you'd probably say something like, wow, this is pretty dense. But if you actually flip through the design document, something I'm sure we'd all very much like to do, you'd find that each page's heading is only one sentence, with the rest of the content emphasizing photos and drawings. In a similar way, the Smash Bros. Ultimate E3 presentation only explained each fighter's basic abilities, and briefly at that. This is because Sakurai wanted their demonstrations to be easy enough to understand that anybody would be able to relay them back and come away with a basic understanding of each fighter without being too bogged down by minutiae. In closing, Sakurai defines presentation as the relationship between tempo and interest. If you commit that principle to memory, he says, you'll develop a natural knack for identifying and cutting extraneous details from your own presentations. And that brings us to the end of the column, which means it's time to wrap up this news update. As always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on social media using the links in the video description below. In the meantime, keep it on GameXplain for more on Smash Bros. Ultimate and all things gaming.